Tanzania, the largest country in East Africa, slightly south of the equator, Karibuni and Jambo. Welcome to this natural paradise. The large variety of nature here is overwhelming. The Serengeti and Selous nature reserves, the snow-covered Kilimanjaro, and the spice island of Zanzibar in the Indian Ocean. A country of superlatives that originated in 1964 as a result of the union of two independent countries, Tanganika and Zanzibar. In the north of Tanzania is a fascinating region that is situated around Kilimanjaro. Arusha is the busy center of this area and the starting point of the country's most important game reserves. From here, several buses travel to various cities, and its good strategic location is why Arusha has developed into the administration center of this region that is Tanzania's shining light. It's one of the fastest growing cities in East Africa, and also the agricultural center of this fertile land, a fact well demonstrated by the city's markets. On the slopes of the nearby mountains, Meru and Kilimanjaro, coffee, maize, bananas and vegetables are grown, and then offered for sale at various markets. Because of its fertile volcanic soil, the entire region has been used for agriculture since the middle of the 19th century by both the Arusha Massai and Meru tribes. A group of people that formed part of the Maasai tribe moved from the dry regions of the Rift Valley to this area and used the agricultural techniques of the Meru. As with many Tanzanian cities, Arusha is a little run down, but tourism is good for its economy and the general standard of living of its population. Morning mist hangs above the jungle that is situated between the mountain peaks of Mount Narrows and Kilimanjaro. The Arusha National Park is one of the most beautiful parks in Africa. The green forest is a perfect playground for the countless monkeys that live here. Around 20 million years ago, this landscape was created due to volcanic activity. Wonderful craters appeared, as well as impressive volcanic cones. Families of giraffe roam peacefully across the spacious savanna at the foot of the crater mountains and make it easy to forget that red-hot lava once flowed with impunity onto this land. The shallow Momella lakes are extremely salty, so the local wildlife can't drink there. However, several animals inhabit the area around the 7 small lakes that are located here. On the water, large groups of flamingos, pelicans, herons and waders converge during their travels. Due to poaching, the park's rhinos almost became extinct and the elephants retreated into the hills. But now nature conservation is a priority here. Arusha Airport features sightseeing flights to the most famous and highest mountain in Africa, Kilimanjaro, a giant with no less than 3 peaks. Our pilot is a charming lady who flies the aircraft in a large arc above the former active volcano area that extends around the enigmatic mountain. It is essential to make a wide, sweeping approach, as the small aircraft must attain a height of up to 5,000 meters. Suddenly, it appears directly in front of us, the famous mountain covered with snow and piercing a sea of cloud. When the missionary Johannes Rebmann first spoke of the snow-covered mountain in East Africa that he had seen from a distance, no one believed him. But the highest freestanding mountain in the world was indeed a reality. At its base, it has a girth of 60 kilometers, and at its height, right up to its snow-covered summit, measures almost 6,000 meters. Many stories are told of this mountain. It's said that the English Queen Victoria gave this mountain as a birthday present to her cousin, the Emperor of Germany. The first leg of our journey travels in a westerly direction, to the vast natural wonders of Tanzania. The first section of our journey has been well planned. The Maasai have settled in this region, and we travel past many of their cattle. In addition to agriculture, they've also retained their large herds of cattle. Again, we pass many small villages along the road that have gradually been influenced by the 21st century. Directly at the point where the steep slopes of the East African ditch suddenly appears like a high wall is Lake Manyara. The alkaline lake is situated 960 meters above sea level. Its size varies according to whether it's dry or the rainy season. This small nature park is only accessible by jeep. Its wildlife is a mixture of species that are typical of Africa. A hippo pool is always a popular focal point. Here it's usually possible to observe these slow and lazy-looking creatures from close quarters. But first impressions can be deceptive. The plants of the savannah are grazed by the animals that live here, and during the rainy season there's an abundance of fresh grass. Many bird varieties rest here while on their travels and enjoy the region's shallow expanses of fresh water. The park's name is derived from the Maasai word Manyara that describes a poisonous bush. Its strong branches are used by the local people to make fences. The swampy forest on the slopes of the Rift Valley features more than 30 different types of tree. It's also a popular habitat for monkeys. An impressive area that offers distant views across fascinating and untouched nature. For the many wealthy tourists who spend their money in this region, there are various special locations that offer excellent accommodation. Here, 3 luxurious lodges have been designed to blend in with the natural surroundings. At the edge of the ditch, a swimming pool, magnificent view, and a wonderful atmosphere. This is a relaxing, tranquil spot and a unique habitat for the myriad colourful animals that live here. The Africa of romantic novels, vast wilderness, and a landscape that conjures up images of nothing less than paradise. Travelling towards the northwest, our journey takes us to the Mbulu High Plateau. It brings to mind the words of Ernest Hemingway. As light as though covered by veils, dusty yet crystal clear. God, whoever it was that created East Africa, could not have done better. Next, we arrive at the entrance to the Ngorongoro Nature Reserve. One of the most striking features of this landscape is its variety. Some areas resemble a jungle that until midday is both misty and mysterious. It was on the edge of this crater that wildlife cameraman Michael Gritzmek met his death. Rim Road travels around the entire crater. This is the stomping ground of the Maasai, who have lived here for several centuries. The Maasai were forced to move their settlements out of the crater area and the Ngorongoro as the cattle threatened the nature reserve's wildlife. From the edge of the crater, there's a splendid view across the landscape. This is only a tiny section of the East African ditch system that extends from Mozambique to Syria. A steep path leads from the rim road to the bottom of the crater. Despite the local laws, the Maasai continue to lead their cattle into the fertile crater in order that their animals may pasture there. The Maasai find it difficult to understand why they should have to give up their traditional grazing grounds. Close to the Lurai forest are what are known as hippo pools. Their name indicates the type of creature that lives here. The 260 square kilometre large crater is home to a fascinating world of wildlife. The huge Mandusi swamps attract numerous creatures, including a large variety of waterfowl. Even the largest member of the bird family, the ostrich, is at home here. There's always a plentiful supply of food. Warthogs appear mainly in the savanna-like areas of the nature reserve. And the waterholes are home to hippopotamus. Some of the most striking animals in the large crater area of Ngorongoro are the zebra that live in small families of up to 20 members. Because it is a crater, and there are so many animals living within it, the Ngorongoro Crater is like a gigantic zoo. From November, the swamps are visited by Eurasian migratory birds. This is their winter residence. 100 lions inhabit the crater. In contrast to other predators such as the leopard, the king of animals is easy to observe. At noon, after a successful hunt and with a full stomach, lions and spotted hyena roam idly across their territory. Both landscape and animal kingdom are spectacular here, as is the end of each day. On the journey between the Ngorongoro and the Empakai Crater that is located on a high volcanic plateau, our progress is slow. Even here, we come across Maasai cattlemen. They are searching for new pastures for their large herds. The rangers are delighted that more and more people from all over the world visit the remote Empakai Crater. A park ranger takes us with him on his daily walk through the park. Small paths lead down the steep slopes of the Empakai Crater, the bottom of which is full of water. A park ranger can help visitors gain a deeper insight into the many natural wonders of this area and also its wonderful myths and legends. As the crater has until recently been off the tourist trail, it has been and still is important as a conservation area. The Empakai Crater is not only a fascinating place for visitors, but also an important natural refuge for wildlife. The remote location of the lake attracts much bird life. A journey down into the Serengeti plains is partly blocked by herds of cattle. And modern jeeps pass by various vehicles that have broken down. Yet the seemingly endless landscape that we're heading for isn't far away. Until the middle of the 20th century, many Maasai villages were situated within the park, but now they've been forced to move outside. In former times, the Maasai earned their living solely by breeding cattle, and they refused to take part in alternatives such as hunting. Following a friendly welcome by the village community, the men perform a special Maasai ritual. The ululation dance of the young tribesmen is one of the most famous ceremonies of the Maasai. It's also very competitive. Today, although the traditional way of life has been influenced by modern times, the Maasai's main source of income continues to be cattle breeding. One of the few innovations in rural Maasai villages is a school. It usually consists of a single hut. The history of human habitation in this region can be seen within the mighty Oldupai Canyon in the south of the Serengeti. The almost 50-kilometer-long canyon not only impresses due to its beautiful rock formations, but it's also said to be the primeval cell of mankind. In the second half of the 20th century, two British archaeologists and anthropologists, Louis and Mary Leakey, made several striking discoveries here. In the Oldupai Canyon on the 17th of July 1959, Mary Leakey discovered a hominid skull that made both explorers world famous. The almost 2-million-year-old skull was the oldest prehistoric discovery of human existence ever found. A sensation. The Serengeti, one of the greatest natural wonders on Earth. Few other landscapes match the splendor of this African wilderness than this amazing nature reserve. The kopis are mainly situated in the southern section of the park. They're huge primeval granite rocks that tower high into the landscape. The East African plateau is often described as the Garden of Eden. Here, the large variety of landscapes, as well as many species of wildlife, are really quite remarkable. On safari, encounters with elephants are commonplace. With its mighty horns, the African buffalo is one of the big five, being the 5 most popular animals in Africa. One of the most striking is the giraffe, a creature that can be found on almost all of the tree-covered savannas south of the Sahara. With around 3 million animals, East Africa's Serengeti National Park contains more wildlife than any other area in the world. Two-thirds of the wildlife consists of Thompson gazelles, gnus and zebra that usually live together in huge herds. Hidden behind trees is a hippo pool that is clearly occupied by a number of massive hippopotamus. At first sight, these weighty animals appear to be calm, relaxed, and peaceful. But this can be deceptive. Their behavior can be highly unpredictable. Although everything is calm at present, it's best to be on one's guard and not take any risks. They can be very dangerous indeed, and a close encounter with a hippo can prove to be fatal. The exotic charm of the African wilderness and its unspoiled landscapes feature very strongly in the Serengeti National Park. Animals once settled here that did not originally come from this region, such as the elephant. One of the attractions of the Serengeti National Park is the great migration of its herds of wildlife. They mark the beginning of a good hunting season for big cats such as the cheetah. And there are spies from above. Despite their bad reputation, the vulture is important for the natural cycle of life within this wilderness. At the time of the Great Migrations, the herds travel in the direction of grumeti, following their primeval instinct. In recent years, the elephant population here has increased. Thanks to successful conservation measures, almost 2,000 elephants now live in the national park. The conservation of this huge and unique nature reserve is vital for the survival of many rare and threatened African animals. The Serengeti, a world full of primeval beauty and natural wonder. Early the following day, our next adventure begins. While the balloon is being prepared, we are entertained by the gradual awakening of nature and a view of the rising sun. Shortly before the takeoff, there's a final discussion about the details of the balloon safari. Then we can get on board. The passengers are a little apprehensive about the adventures that lie ahead. Entering the basket has to be done in unusual manner, and the balloon is given more heat. Finally, the balloon is ready and our journey can begin. The hot air balloon glides majestically above the plains, and the full beauty of the landscape is revealed. Depending on wind and weather, the balloon rises to an altitude of more than 300 meters above sea level. The pilots also often navigate their balloons close to the ground and just above the treetops. Most of the animals run away at the sight of the hot air balloon and the strange sound caused by its burner. This exclusive trip finally reaches its conclusion. We duly land and disembark. Happy to be on firm ground once more and still buzzing from the amazing experience, we all enjoy a very welcome glass of champagne. Now there's a mobile kitchen in which a traditional English breakfast is being prepared for the hungry travelers. The setting for this breakfast could hardly be better. A large, beautifully laid table in the shade of a tree and surrounded by the wonderful wilderness of the Serengeti. A unique adventure full of all the magic of East Africa. Tanzania is one of the poorest countries on earth. Nevertheless, it is rich in the remarkable variety and beauty of its landscapes that is both unique and breathtaking. On our journey south, it becomes easier to understand how no other country in Africa has become as accessible as Tanzania. New roads and buses that can be seen the length and breadth of the country make it easy to visit the natural sights of this splendid land. When arriving in Moshi, we are greeted by minarets and the golden cupolas of a mosque. And there are also Indian temples and Christian churches. This small town is situated on the southern flanks of Kilimanjaro. It's also an important centre of agriculture and is famous for its Arabica coffee. It's easy to get around the town. It has a market, train station, and 2 long streets. Here, the peaceful coexistence of various religions is most impressive. Moshi's former prosperity is difficult to see now. Nothing remains of its glorious past. But the poverty of today's inhabitants is plain to see. The Dukas are still here, Indians whose ancestors came here a long time ago. Today they dominate the city's trade. The special charm of this town is provided by its many dilapidated buildings that are in severe need of repair. In 1911, a train station was built in Moshi. Its architecture has remained unchanged and still commemorates its German builder. A number of companies specialize in climbing gear and rent out tents and other equipment. Many climbers begin their Kilimanjaro adventure in Moshi. Our journey continues into the south of the country that has not yet been discovered by tourism. There's a good road which makes life a little easier along what can be demanding terrain. We pass the dramatic shining mountain landscape of the Usambara Mountains, whose green slopes feature a number of rare plants. German settlers once lived here. At the entrance to the Selous Game Reserve, an old steam engine reminds us that this was once a German colony. Close to Empakai Gate is a tiny runway. Several small aircraft land here each day. Newly arrived passengers transfer to a jeep and then travel into the wild regions of the Selous Nature Reserve. Much of the game reserve is crossed by the Rufiji River and its tributaries. The Selous Game Reserve is a nature reserve of the superlative. As well as being both the oldest and largest in Africa, it's a world of natural beauty and exotic wildlife. The river is important for the landscape. It provides water for the region's plant and wildlife. Prior to the establishment of the game reserve, this area was a paradise for hunters and poachers. Because this nature reserve is extremely remote and difficult to reach, those who come here today are able to admire its wildlife in a most natural way. Although the region has a relatively small amount of rainfall each year, the Rufiji contains more water than most other rivers in East Africa. The Rufiji is at the heart of this unique natural habitat. Not all of the 52,000 square kilometre game reserve is open to the public. Hunting is permitted in some areas of Selous, but it is strictly controlled. As with most of the game reserve's camps, the Impala camp has a magnificent location directly on the banks of the Rufiji River. The camp's furnishings are reminiscent of colonial times. A romantic atmosphere, yet in those bygone days, life was a little more demanding. The camp also offers various river safaris on the Rufiji River. They add a different dimension to the land safaris. We encounter a large African elephant that is considering whether to cross the Rufiji. It looks a little unsure. The origins of the Selous Game Reserve date back to German colonial times at the beginning of the 20th century. In 1905, the first game reserves were established here. Later, under British rule, they were united into a large protected area. The heart of Selous, the 600-meter-long Rufiji, originates at the junction of the Ulanga and Luego rivers. The reserve derived its name from Frederick Courtney Selous, an Englishman. And close to the Beho Beho Lodge is his final resting place. Early the next morning, we make for the train station. The journey on the Mukuba Express to the capital takes us across one of the most beautiful natural landscapes in Tanzania. There is no precise timetable for the train that will arrive here from Zambia. It could arrive at virtually any moment. The Mukuba Express stops here only twice a week, and even today, the arrival of a train is still a special event. But then finally the long wait is over. With a loud creaking sound, the train comes to a halt. Now the crowds of people that have been waiting patiently begin to move. After a long stop, the train continues towards Dar es Salaam, the final destination on this leg of the journey. The railway line once again crosses the most captivating natural landscapes of the Selous Game Reserve. For several hours we travel through untouched nature. Around a quarter of this huge reserve is covered by savanna. Despite the railroad, the region has retained its original and unspoiled splendor right up to the present day. The train enters the siding of a small station in order that the oncoming train for Zambia is able to pass. Next we arrive at Mzenga Station. It's crowded with tradesmen who are selling all manner of goods, but we have only a short time to enjoy the colourful scene. Our train moves on. What was once known as the Middle Land Railroad was one of the most technically challenging and expensive projects of East Africa's German colonists. Today, the 1,254-kilometre Middle Land Railroad is an important reminder of those bygone days. Dar es Salaam, Harbour of Peace. The name of this East African metropolis highlights the special significance of the harbour for the city's 3.5 million inhabitants. In 1856, it was just a tiny fishing village. But with the arrival of the German colonists at the end of the 19th century, everything changed. With the decision of the colonial rulers to move their capital from Bagamoyo to Dar es Salaam, the city began to grow at a rapid pace. The fish market, situated at the end of the bay, is also a must. In the early morning, the fishermen erect their stalls and proudly display their catch. It's a colourful place. The town is also very lively and its inhabitants are full of joie de vivre. The ravages of the First World War also influenced this part of Africa. More than 100,000 African soldiers died in battle. The Askari monument in the center of the city commemorates that tragic time. For those interested in history, the National Museum has many fascinating exhibits. In addition to archaeological finds and illustrations of East Africa's various historic epochs, a section of the museum is also dedicated to the history of Dar es Salaam's former city fathers. Dar es Salaam's Lutheran church has a powerful appearance. The interior of the church is always busy. With their lively songs and dances, the church services here are more like a religious festival than a contemplative occasion. Several old facades indicate the former splendor of an historic epoch. The Germans and later the British left a well-ordered town. In 1914, the German train station as well as the railway line to the Tanganika Sea was completed. But it was not until 80 years later that the line to Zambia was constructed. The impressive Catholic St. Joseph's Cathedral was consecrated in 1905 and now shines out in all its glory. Restoration work has removed the ravages of time from this neo-Gothic building. Only a few steps from the cathedral is the ferry port. From here, ferries embark for the legendary spice and pirate island of Zanzibar. The ferryboat leaves the busy harbour that was discovered by Sultan Majid and that the Germans made into a deep-water harbour. Boat gains speed, and for some time we follow the East African coastline in a northerly direction until we begin to cross open water. After 90 minutes, we reach a harbour. Excited passengers go ashore. Zanzibar, the Sultan's beautiful land, a paradise-like island that lies just off the Tanzanian coast, an African dream of the 1001 Nights. Stone Town is situated in the center of the island. The ancient oriental city of Zanzibar derived its name from its many old stone buildings. Charming and mysterious, they've witnessed much of the island's dramatic past. Around 1200 AD, the Persians settled here, and 5 centuries later came the Arabs, who strengthened Islamic influence in this region. In 1840, the Ottoman Sultan Sayyid Said transferred his residence to Zanzibar that had become the center of the slave trade. In 1873, the Anglican Church of Christ was built by a band of missionaries in this square that once contained an infamous slave market. The altar was built where once slaves were whipped, and behind it is the tomb of the brave bishop who had the courage to pray for the Muslim community. It is difficult to imagine the scene that was once here, when each afternoon 300 or more slaves were brought to the square. The dark dungeons of the nearby slave house have now been relegated to the history books. It was here that the slaves were forced to wait until they were sold. At 7 o'clock in the morning, the fish market opens for business. In the north of the old town is one of the island's most beautiful buildings, the Ismaili Dispensarium. It was built by a wealthy Indian businessman as a hospital and pharmacy. The Institute of Foreign Languages was once the residence of the Gros Viziers of the Sultans. The High Court is contained within a building complex that combines both Arabian and Portuguese architecture. The house of the infamous Tipu Tip, who was once Zanzibar's biggest slave trader, has not yet been restored. On the periphery of the city are white and isolated beaches, and in front of Stone Town anchor fishing boats and excursion ships. In the middle of the 17th century, Zanzibar, that had for many years been occupied by the Portuguese, fell under the rule of the Arabian Imam of Oman, who had the Arab fort built. Said the Great founded the Sultanate of Zanzibar in 1832. Splendid palaces such as this were built, and the royal family plus the women of the harem lived here in amazing luxury until the Sultan was eventually banished. The peaceful palace garden contains the graves of Sultan Said and his son. Once the Portuguese, Germans and British ruled here, until in 1964 the Independent People's Republic united with Tanganika and became Tanzania. It takes about 20 minutes to travel to Canggu Island, where once rebellious Arabs were imprisoned. The island also has another name, Turtle Island. It has a large number of huge tortoises that originated from Oldupai. But the island of Zanzibar has many further sights. For his 99-woman harem, in 1880 Sultan Bagash had a palace built outside the city, the Mahubi Palace. As the Ottoman monarchs ruled over the island with a good degree of success, they imported the first glove trees from Mauritius, exploited the natural forests, and created large plantations. A trip to the spice plantations in the interior of the island, a spice tour, is a particularly fascinating experience. The magic of the Orient and the sense of being in a fairy tale world are made even more splendid when the sun finally sets in this tropical paradise. Although the subject of much transformation, the fascination of this country remains intact. And stories of ancient kingdoms, mysterious cults, and magical rites are still told today. Tanzania is a natural paradise that is known by only a few, an exotic country, and one that is still waiting to be fully explored.